The galaxy had belonged to the Empire for as long as anyone could remember. Its fleet stretched from one end of the stars to the other, and its banners hung over thousands of worlds. To most species, the Empire was eternal, undefeatable, and unshakable. Its admirals spoke with arrogance, its soldiers with cruelty, and its rulers with complete confidence that nothing could rise against them. Humanity was nothing more than a footnote in their long history, a defeated race, erased and forgotten, or so they believed. Far from the heart of the Empire, at the edge of cold, empty space, a lone scout ship drifted through dark silence. Its crew expected nothing. They were here only to patrol, to watch for smugglers or lost merchants. But their instruments began to flicker with strange readings. Something massive was out there, hidden in the black. The crew stared through the viewport, and then they saw it. A giant vessel floated ahead, silent and still. Its hull was scarred, its shape unlike anything in the Empire's designs. The ship looked dead, lifeless, and yet it commanded a presence so heavy that even the seasoned captain of the scout ship felt his chest tighten. It was not alien, not familiar. It was something different, something older. At first, they thought it was a derelict, an old warship abandoned long ago. But when the captain checked the records, nothing matched. The Empire had never built anything like this. The hull markings were faint, eroded by time, but they were clear enough for the scanners to trace. Letters written in an extinct tongue, carved into steel that still endured. The language was human. The scout crew fell into silence. Humanity had been destroyed centuries ago. Their cities had burned, their fleets had shattered, and their leaders had begged for mercy before being crushed under the Empire's heel. Not a single human colony had survived. Every record said the same. Humanity was gone, finished, and yet here was proof that something had remained. The captain sent a message up the chain of command, his words uncertain but urgent. Within hours, the Empire's admirals gathered in council. They laughed when they first heard. To them, humans were insects barely remembered. The idea that a dead human warship could matter seemed ridiculous. But when the first images arrived, their laughter faded. The ship was no ordinary craft. It dwarfed most modern battleships. Its design was strange, brutal, and efficient. It looked like a weapon forged in desperation. Built not for beauty or prestige, but for survival, the admirals studied the details with growing unease. "This is nothing but junk," one said. "It drifts because it is powerless." "Then why does it still exist?" another whispered. "If it were powerless, why has time not torn it apart? Why does it still float whole after centuries?" No one had an answer. The Empire could not allow such a relic to remain. It was a matter of pride. If the galaxy learned that one human weapon had survived, it would be an insult to the Empire's strength. They decided at once. The warship must be taken or destroyed. A fleet was ordered to move. Not a small patrol, not a few destroyers, but an entire strike force. Dozens of ships supported by carriers and heavy cruisers. At the head of this force stood one of the Empire's greatest admirals, a man who had never known defeat. He accepted the mission with a smile, certain it would be easy. In his mind, the warship was nothing more than a broken tomb drifting in space. He would seize it, drag it back to the capital, and display it as proof that the Empire's enemies always fell. But as his fleet prepared to depart, strange reports trickled in. The scout crew spoke of shadows on their sensors, of signals that echoed through their comms. Strange whispers that made no sense. One officer swore he had seen lights flicker across the warship's hull, as if systems were waking for the first time in centuries. The admiral dismissed these stories as fear. Yet even he felt an unease as he studied the image of the human vessel. There was something in the way it floated, something almost alive in its silence. The journey took days. The fleet cut through the darkness, engines burning bright, banners of the Empire gleaming. They moved with arrogance, sure of victory before the battle had even begun. But as they neared the edge of space, where stars thinned and shadows grew long, a heavy quiet settled over every ship. And then they saw it. The warship hung before them, larger than they had imagined. It was not drifting aimlessly, but facing them directly, as though it had waited. Its hull was cracked and worn, but its presence filled the void with an unnatural weight. The admirals on their bridges felt small before it, as though they were children gazing at some ancient beast. For a long moment, no one spoke. The admiral of the fleet leaned forward in his chair, eyes narrowed. He tried to laugh, but the sound caught in his throat. This was no ordinary derelict. This was something else. Without warning, a signal cut across every channel. Harsh, broken, and filled with static, it echoed through the fleet. The language was unknown to the Empire's translators, but it was unmistakably human. A voice, deep and unyielding, spoke words that had not been heard in centuries. The alien crews trembled, though they did not understand the message. They felt the weight of it, the cold fury carried across time. The Admiral straightened, forcing his voice to remain steady. "It is an empty broadcast," he said. "A recording from a dead race. Fire upon the relic. End this farce." But even as his words echoed, every soul aboard the fleet felt it. The warship was not dead. It was waiting. The order was clear. The human relic was to be erased from the stars. The fleet of the Empire moved into formation, rows of shining hulls and banners, a display of power that had crushed countless enemies before. To the soldiers and officers aboard, this was not war. This was routine. The Admiral, Lord Calith, stood on his command bridge with pride in his stance. His armor gleamed, his rank displayed like a crown. He had never known fear in battle. He had never bowed to any enemy. When he looked at the dark shape of the human warship, he did not see danger. He saw a prize waiting to be claimed. He turned to his officers with a smile. "A relic of the past cannot harm us. It is dead metal. We will burn it into dust and the galaxy will forget it ever existed." The officers bowed. None dared to show hesitation, though many felt it deep inside. The fleet advanced. Thousands of guns lit the dark as the first volleys were fired. Bright streaks of plasma and energy burned toward the silent ship. Explosions flared across its hull, but the warship did not move. It did not even try to defend itself. "See?" Lord Calith said, his voice filled with arrogance. "It is nothing. A corpse long dead. Humanity was always weak." But the junior officers whispered in the shadows of the bridge. The scanners gave strange results. The human ship's systems were not shattered as they should have been. The armor absorbed the blows layer after layer with no sign of breaking. The more the fleet fired, the clearer it became. The warship was not powerless. It was enduring. On another ship, a young alien lieutenant pressed his face to the sensor screen. His heart raced as he saw small flashes of light crawling across the human vessel's frame. They were not reflections. They were awakenings, he whispered to his captain, but the warning was silenced. Fear was not allowed in the Empire's ranks. The Admiral ordered the next wave. He wanted the relic broken open, its pieces carried back as trophies. He spoke to his men with confidence, but even he began to notice the stillness of the human ship. It did not break. It did not drift away. It simply faced them, unyielding as though it judged them from across the void. Then a sound came across the channels again. The same harsh voice from before, but this time clearer. It spoke slowly, words filled with cold power. The Empire's translators failed to decode it, but the crew felt it deep in their bones. It was not the voice of a ghost. It was a promise. And then the lights on the human ship came alive. One by one, systems that had slept for centuries flickered awake. Vast engines hummed, casting a faint glow across the void. Armored panels shifted, revealing weapon ports like the eyes of a predator opening in the dark. The silence that had hung heavy was broken by the sound of power thrumming through the ship's veins. Lord Calith froze. For the first time in his life, doubt touched his heart. "Keep firing," he shouted, though his voice shook. "It is awakening," but the human ship did not pursue. It did not race forward. It waited, patient and cold, as though testing them. As though it knew the Empire's arrogance would drive them closer. Inside the bridges of the alien ships, fear grew. The young lieutenant who had seen the first signs of awakening now whispered to himself, "This ship, it remembers us. It remembers the war." But his words were drowned by the Admiral's command, "Advance." Lord Calith roared, "For the Empire!" And so the fleet pressed forward into the jaws of something they did not understand. The human warship turned, its hull glowing faintly as more systems came to life. Its shadow stretched across the stars like a storm rising from the past. The relic was not only alive, it was ready. The first strike, the fleet of the Empire filled the void like a wall of fire. Thousands of ships locked into formation, their weapons glowing with power. To the watching stars it seemed unstoppable, but to the human warship it was only prey. On board the alien ships, tension spread like poison. Officers shouted orders, but their voices carried a sharp edge. Crews obeyed, but their hands trembled as they worked the controls. Even without translation, they felt the meaning of the human voice that had echoed across the channels. It was not the sound of a ghost. It was the sound of an oath carried through centuries. Then the warship moved. It had been still for so long that many believed it could not. But now its vast engines flared with pale blue light, and the relic glided forward with a grace that defied its size. Its hull gleamed as systems awakened fully. It did not race. It did not rush. It advanced like a predator certain of its kill. "Open fire," Lord Calith shouted. His fleet unleashed everything they had. Beams lanced through the void. Missiles streaked in deadly arcs. Plasma bursts lit the dark like a false sunrise. The human ship endured it all. Its shields flickered, its armor groaned, but still it pressed forward. Every shot that should have crippled it was absorbed or deflected. The more the aliens fired, the more impossible it seemed. Then the warship answered. Its main cannon ignited once more. The blast was silent, almost invisible. A narrow spear of energy that cut across the battlefield. Where it touched, matter simply ceased to exist. Entire cruisers evaporated in an instant, their crews never knowing they had died. The alien officers froze. No weapon in the Empire's vast arsenal had ever done such a thing. Their proudest ships were nothing before it. Another cannon flared from the warship's side, tearing apart a carrier in a single strike. Hundreds of smaller fighters scattered into the void, their pilots screaming, only to be shredded by a storm of autonomous drones released from the human ship's hull. The drones were like shards of metal, fast and merciless. They moved with a coordination that no living pilot could match, piercing into engines, detonating reactors, turning entire squadrons into debris in seconds. Panic spread. Formations broke. Captains screamed over comms as their ships vanished. On one destroyer, a young officer gripped the rail of his station until his claws bled. He stared at the sensors and whispered to himself, "This is not a battle. This is a slaughter." But Lord Calith refused to retreat. His pride was chained to the Empire's image of invincibility. To turn back before a human relic would be unthinkable. He forced his voice to be steady as he gave the order. "Surround it. Bring the entire fleet against it. No ship stands against the Empire." So the aliens closed in, thousands of ships tightening their circle around the lone vessel. From afar it seemed foolish, one ship against an Empire's might. But those who faced it knew the truth. The warship welcomed their advance. As they closed, new weapons revealed themselves. The ship's flanks split open, releasing torrents of kinetic slugs. Simple rods of metal accelerated to near light speed. They tore through battleships as though they were paper, carving neat lines of destruction. No shield could stop them. Every alien officer knew the design of these weapons. They were primitive, crude. But here, in the hands of humanity's last warship, they became perfect. Simple death given impossible speed. The fleet screamed in chaos. Half the formation was already gone, their wreckage floating like grave markers in the void. The other half broke under fear. No discipline, no orders, no pride could hold them steady. Still, Lord Calith stood unyielding. His face burned with rage, not fear. "Hold your lines," he roared. "This ship is one against thousands. Do you not see? It cannot last forever." But even as he spoke, another human weapon came alive. A pulse of raw energy swept outward. It was not meant to kill, it was meant to cripple. Systems across dozens of alien ships went dark. Engines shut down. Weapons froze. Entire vessels drifted helplessly as the warship moved past them, ignoring the powerless, hunting only those who could still resist. The alien lieutenant who had first noticed the ship's awakening stared at his dead controls, tears filling his eyes. "It does not fight like us," he whispered. "It fights as if it knows us. It was built for us. For this moment, the battle no longer belonged to the Empire. It belonged to the relic." One by one, the Empire's proudest ships fell. Fire burned across the void, wreckage spinning in silence. The warship did not pursue glory. It did not roar in victory. It killed with precision, with patience, with the cold certainty of something forged for this single purpose. At last, the Admiral's voice cracked. For the first time, he felt it, the truth pressing against his chest like a weight. This was not a relic. This was vengeance carved into steel. The Empire's greatest fleet, gathered in arrogance, was being erased by the hands of the very species they had sworn into extinction, and the warship was only beginning. Humanity's revenge, The battle no longer looked like a clash of fleets. It looked like history itself breaking open. The Empire had marched into the void with its banners proud and certain, but now the banners burned among the wreckage of broken ships. The human warship moved with cold purpose. Every strike was exact. Every shot found the enemy's weakness. It fought not like a machine, but like something that remembered. The patterns of its attacks were not random. They were written in knowledge of the Empire itself. On the flagship of Lord Calith, silence gripped the officers. No one spoke, though alarm screamed across the deck. The Admiral's pride, once sharp as steel, was now heavy and brittle. He had sworn that numbers would bring victory, but numbers meant nothing here. The warship did not care about numbers. It cared only about destruction. From its flanks, swarms of drones cut through space like living blades. They targeted command ships first, severing leadership before striking the rest. Every admiral, every captain who dared to shout orders, found their vessel shredded into dust. In minutes, the command net of the Empire collapsed. Ships fought alone, confused and terrified, their discipline gone. They fired wildly into the dark, hitting allies more often than their enemy. But the human vessel never wasted a shot. Each cannon, each beam, each burst of kinetic fire was deliberate. The warship fought with a calmness that felt like cruelty. Among the alien survivors, horror grew with every moment. This was not simply a battle between technology. This was a warship that had been designed for one purpose: vengeance. Humanity had known it would lose its colonies, its fleets, its worlds. But before falling, it had poured everything into one creation: a weapon that could never forgive, a ship that would never rest. The Admiral clenched his fists as another wave of his fleet vanished. He forced his voice to rise above the chaos. "We cannot fall to ghosts. Humanity is dust. They are nothing but ash in history." But deep inside, he knew the truth. Humanity had not been erased. It had chosen another path. It had left behind its anger in steel, its sorrow in fire, its revenge in this silent ship. The lieutenant who had once whispered warnings now stood frozen, his eyes locked on the scanner. His voice shook as he spoke. "It is not only a weapon. It is their last voice. It speaks with every strike. It says, 'You may kill us, but you will never escape us.'" And in those words, the bridge fell quiet. Even the Admiral felt the weight of them. The warship pressed forward, deeper into the heart of the fleet. Its weapons roared, its drones swarmed, its massive hull carved through the chaos. It did not slow. It did not hesitate. Every piece of technology the Empire trusted, their shields, their armor, their fleets, proved useless. The warship had studied them all long before they had been built. Humanity had designed it to fight the Empire's future, not its past. One carrier tried to retreat, engines burning as it fled into the dark. But the warship's long-range cannons struck, splitting it into two halves before it could escape. The wreckage spun silently, glowing like dying stars. Another cruiser begged for orders, its captain's voice cracking with fear. No orders came. The flagship itself was in chaos, its officers torn between loyalty and terror. Lord Calith roared, his pride refusing to yield. "We will not run." The Empire does not bow to the ghosts of vermin, but as he shouted, the warship's drones cut through another line of battleships. The enemy was not vermin. The enemy was not weak. The enemy was vengeance itself, sharpened across centuries. At last, the Admiral's words rang hollow. He saw it in the eyes of his crew. They no longer believed him. They no longer believed in the Empire's invincibility. The warship had shattered more than ships. It had shattered faith, the lieutenant whispered again, though no one asked him to. This is not only their revenge, it is their justice. They built this ship to make sure their death would never be forgotten. Outside, the warship continued its path. Each strike of its weapons was like a heartbeat, steady and merciless. Ships burned, fleets fell, admirals died, and still the warship pressed on. It did not chase survivors. It did not waste time on glory. It destroyed only what stood in its way, as though guided by a code written long ago. The Empire's greatest fleet was collapsing. The void, once filled with shining banners of pride, was now filled with burning wreckage and drifting bodies. Humanity's warship had turned the galaxy's strongest armada into ashes, and still it did not stop. The Admiral lowered his head. For the first time in his long career, he felt small. His pride, his certainty, his empire, all seemed meaningless in the face of one truth. Humanity had died, but its vengeance lived. The silent departure, the battle was over. Where once a proud fleet had stretched across the stars, only silence remained. Broken ships drifted without power, their shattered hulls glowing faintly in the dark. Fires burned where air still clung, casting a dull orange light on the endless black. The Empire's banners, once carried like symbols of eternity, floated as torn scraps among the wreckage, and at the center of it all, the human warship stood. Its massive frame loomed quietly, scarred but whole. Weapons that had burned with fury now dimmed, drones returning to hidden ports like shadows fading at dawn. The warship did not chase the few survivors who limped away into the void. It did not pursue the crippled ships that begged for mercy. It simply drifted, its engines humming softly as if satisfied with what it had done. On the bridge of Lord Calith's flagship, silence was heavier than grief. Officers stared at broken screens at the dying lights of allies. No one spoke. No one dared. The Admiral stood rigid, his jaw clenched, his eyes burning with something that was no longer pride. He had commanded the Empire's greatest fleet. He had believed in its unshakable power, but before him floated a single relic, a ship from a race his empire had sworn extinct, and it had destroyed everything he commanded. The lieutenant who had whispered warnings finally spoke, his voice trembling. "It is finished. We are broken." The warship did not fight for victory. It fought to remind us, humanity is not gone. Humanity remembers. The Admiral turned sharply, anger flashing in his eyes, but he could not argue. The truth was written across the stars in every burning wreck. Far from the flagship, survivors whispered the same fear. Across damaged cruisers and crippled destroyers, alien soldiers asked one another the same question. If one ship survived, how many more were waiting? The warship began to power down. Its engines dimmed, its weapons folded away. It returned to the silence it had known for centuries. No broadcast followed, no words of triumph, no message of warning. It did not need them. The message had already been carved into the minds of every living witness. It had shown the galaxy that humanity's defeat was not complete. The warship turned slowly, drifting back into the empty dark. Its shape faded into shadow, until only its outline remained against distant stars, and then even that was gone. For a long while the survivors stared into the silence, waiting for it to return, but the void remained still. The warship had left as if it had only awakened for this moment, only long enough to strike and then return to its endless sleep. In the Empire's capital, word of the disaster traveled fast.